Check it out, guys. We've got a leaky fork seal on our TT-R110. We're gonna show you how to get those replaced today and rebuild your forks. This process is gonna be similar for the bikes all the way back to 2008. Let's go ahead and get into it. To get this done, we have fork and dust seals. We've got several options on our website. The other thing you're gonna wanna look at is your fork oil. So the manual is gonna call for 10 weight. We're trying to match the oil to our rider. So if it's a bigger kid riding this, you can go with the 15. And if you have an adult riding the bike, you might wanna go with a 20 weight. Now, other than that, we're just using some Loctite and some contact cleaner. Now, if you need any of this stuff, you can find it on our website by clicking the link in the description below. Must-haves, common hand tools. So 5 and 6 millimeter Allens, 10, 12, and 14 millimeter sockets. I also have some combo wrenches, so 14 and 19. And then the 19 is gonna be used with this damping rod holding tool. You don't have to have one of these, but it will make the job easier. And hey, if you're working on more than just one bike, maybe you're helping the neighbors out, I recommend getting one of these. We also have torque wrenches. And then a must-have tool is your seal driver. So this is the Tusk Universal Seal Driver. We're using some safety wire and safety wire pliers to make using that tool a little bit easier. And then to remove the old seal, we've got a tire spoon, but you can just use a seal puller instead if you want. We're also using a clip pick tool. You could use a small flat blade screwdriver as well. And then if you have any minor damage to the fork tubes, you can clean that up with a fine file, emery cloth, or some maroon Scotch-Brite. Other than that, you want safety glasses, rubber gloves, rags. You're also gonna need a measuring cup. We have a fork oil level setting tool and a drain pan. And then other than that, you need a bike stand and some soft jaws for your vise. Now, if you need any special tools, you can find that stuff on our website. All right, first thing we need to do is get these forks off the bike. So we've got this brake line retainer. Gonna loosen that up, free it up. And we're gonna use a 14 millimeter combo wrench and socket. We'll remove the axle. And once you pull that out, we're gonna pull these brake shoes out, remove the wheel. So right here you can see the top of the forks are flush with the upper edge of the triple clamp. Just make sure it gets back in the same location when you go back together. We're gonna loosen up that lower triple. That's a 14 millimeter socket, and then we'll loosen up the upper triple with a 10. Keep a hand on it so the fork doesn't slide down. Then we'll go ahead and remove it. And if this is stuck in here for any reason, sometimes you can grab on them and kind of twist it back and forth as you work it out. Now, over at the bench, first thing we want to do is clean up the fork. There's a couple of reasons for this. One, these inner tubes, they can get scratches on them, or sometimes they'll get pitting from rust. And if you have any of that going on, you want to get it cleaned up before you take anything apart. And that way we don't get dirt or any little shavings down in our parts. And then with that, if you have a serious scratch or it's pitted out really bad, obviously you're just going to want to replace that tube. But if you see anything that's minor, you can use a fine file, you can use emery cloth, or even a little bit of Scotch-Brite, and then just clean that up. I like to go in a crisscross pattern and just make some crosshatch marks on there if I find any issues. But that said, let's go ahead and use our contact cleaner and get all this cleaned up. So we found one little spot, and we're just gonna clean that up. And that way we don't have anything that's gonna damage our new seal when we install it. And we also have a little rust ring where this sits in the triple clamps. I'm just gonna clean that up. All right, now that we're cleaned up, I am gonna pop this dust seal up. So I'm just using a flat blade screwdriver. We'll gently work it up in a couple spots. And I've got my clip pick tool. I'm going to remove this retaining clip. We'll pull both of these off, and as you take the fork apart, just lay everything out in order. The next step is to loosen up this center bolt or the damping rod bolt. So we're going to put our fork tube in the vise. I do have soft jaws, but with this surface being painted, I'm going to use a rag just in case. Now the center bolt is a 6mm Allen. I'm going to use an impact gun to help loosen that up. And we're just cracking it loose. You can take it out all the way now, but we're going to drain our oil before we take ours all the way out. We just need to make sure it's loose, just like that. And this is how you get around having the special tool. All right, next we have this little cap on top. Pop that out. I'm going to gently clamp onto this outer tube, and I'm clamping above where, or right about where the triple clamps normally go. Then to remove that cap, we're just going to press down on it with an extension, and I've got my clip pick tool. I'll remove the clip, release the pressure, and the cap will come up. So underneath the cap, we've got this spacer. We've got our drain pan underneath if any oil comes out. And as I push this up, you're going to see the spring. If you can't reach it with your finger, you can use your clip pick tool or a hook or whatever you got. But we're going to pull that up. There's a little washer on top of the spring. And pay attention to the orientation of the spring. So the side facing down is going to be a little more narrow than the top. And then from here, we're going to dump out our oil. And we'll at least dump out whatever's left. I'm going to pump the fork up and down. That's going to help us out. Now, if you're using the damping rod holding tool, this is where you'd stick it down into the fork tube and loosen up that damping rod bolt. We're just going to finish buzzing it out since ours is already loose. There should be a little washer on the end. Not a bad idea to replace those. And then from here, all of this is going to come apart. So I'm going to pull this inner tube all the way out. Obviously, we still have some fluid in here, so doing this over the drain pan, but right here we've got the damping rod sticking through. This is your bottoming cone. So don't forget the order of all this stuff as you go back together, but I'm going to flip this upside down and keep my hand over the end. So you're going to have the damping rod and a top out spring right there. Then from here, I'm going to drain a little more oil out of this outer tube. And then we're going to pull the old oil seal out. All right, so we already removed that retaining clip. Just verify that you have yours out. And then I'm going to use a towel on this side of my fork tube. Now you can use a seal puller if you want, but these tire spoons work really well at applying pressure to these fork seals. Sometimes they can be pretty tight. And then we're also minimizing the risk of scratching the sealing surface on this tube as well. And you can see we've got a washer in there as well. Pull that out. And then from here, we need to clean everything up. So you can see there's lots of grime right here. We want to make sure we get that all cleaned up. And then at the bottom, usually there's quite a bit as well. And then on this inner fork tube, right at the top, you might see some grime as well. Make sure you get that wiped out. And if you wipe down any internal parts, you want to make sure you use a lint-free rag. And again, I'm just going to do one more inspection on this and make sure I don't have any scratches that are going to cause issues. This one's looking good. Then we can go through and clean up all of our parts. We're just using some contact cleaner. You can use suspension clean if you want. And any places that have lots of grime, make sure you get those wiped down really well. And this bolt, you can see, has some old Loctite on it. We're going to scrub that off with a wire brush. All right, now with everything cleaned up, we're just gonna make a couple of inspections. So look for any obvious signs of damage and replace anything that needs it. But as far as this damping rod, there is a piston ring on there and there is a split in there that should be there. But if it's broken, obviously get that replaced. And then the other thing I want to talk about is there's a bushing in this lower tube. So with the bushing, if you look down inside of there, there should be a Teflon coating you can see all the way around. If you can see it's worn through, you see a brass color, then on a lot of these, you're just gonna have to replace this entire piece. With ours, you can see it's kind of backed out just a little bit. So I'm gonna use a bearing driver to hit that back down all the way. Other than that, we already talked about looking at this outer tube. If it felt like it was binding up as you pulled things apart, you might want to inspect this to make sure it's not bent. But all of our parts are looking good, so we're going to start going back together. We're going to put this outer tube in the vise. Now this bushing should drive in pretty easy. We can hear that bottom out. It's flush with the surface all the way around, so we know we're good. All right, now for the fork sills, the manual is going to tell you to come from the top of the fork. I'm actually going to come from the bottom on this one. The only reason being, you know, if you have any imperfections up here where the seals normally don't ride, maybe you had a little pitting or whatever, that could potentially damage your seal. But if you do come from the top, it's recommended. You can just use a corner of the bag that the seals came in, cut that off and put it up here. It's going to help protect your seal on this corner, even though it does have a little bit of a taper. So with that said, I do want to make sure there's some fork oil on this tube. And I'm going to use seal grease on the lips of the seal. Again, coming from the bottom, we have no sharp edges. We're putting the dust seal on first. Now for the oil seal, you've got 3 different lips on here. So you've got a double lip on one side. That's what you want facing down or facing this outer tube. That's going to hold all the oil in. And then you've got one lip on top. That's just going to help dirt, debris, that kind of thing. Anything that gets past the dust seal, it's going to keep those things out. Again, we're going to grease it up. And I know you're thinking we forgot the retaining clip, but we're going to put that on later. And then right here, we've got the backup ring for our seal. And we're ready to prep the damping rod. So make sure you apply some fork oil to that piston ring. Don't forget your top out spring. We're going to slide this down the tube. Going to help guide it through the bottom. And then right here, we want to make sure we can set this bottoming cone in place and not have it fall off. So I'm just going to use some grease on the end of the damping rod. It's going to stick that on there. And I'm trying not to get any grease on the threads that are inside of the damping rod. Next, if you don't have one of these special tools, you're going to slide the spring on. You've got your washer and your spacer, and then you can slide everything together, and you're going to have to put some pressure on that fork spring to hold everything in place while you tighten it down. But again, we're going to show you how to use this special tool if you have one. So we're all the way in there. I'm going to apply some fork oil to that bushing. And again, really important to make sure that that bottoming cone stays in place. And you should feel the bottoming cone center up at the bottom of the fork. There it goes, clipped into place. Now if you're using the special tool, you're going to hold one end or that end with a wrench. Then make sure you have your copper washer on that bolt for the damping rod. It's never a bad idea to replace that copper washer. We're going to apply just a little bit of thread locker. We'll screw this into place. We're going to torque it to 14 foot-pounds. Now if you're just using the spring and spacer to apply pressure to that damping rod, you can use your impact and just kind of go until it bottoms out. You don't want to go crazy with the impact because it's a small bolt and you don't want to break anything. And even with the special tool, we're still going to have to put the fork in the vise to get it torqued. We'll go ahead and remove that damping rod tool. And from here, we're set up to install the fork sills. So next thing I'm going to do is slide that oil seal as far down as I can. And then we're using this universal fork seal driver. So we need to get it set up for our forks. So just use a screwdriver and adjust these ends up where you need them. I'll be honest with you guys, these universal seal drivers, they're not the easiest to use, but one way to make them easy to use is take a little bit of safety wire and you can tie these ends together. We're just using the safety wire pliers, and then that way you can use it like a regular seal driver and it gets rid of a lot of your issues. We've got a little oil on the fork tube, so we'll go ahead and drive that seal into place. And we're going to drive it all the way down. You should be able to feel and hear it bottom out, and you can verify that by making sure the ring for the clip is fully exposed. So I heard that pitch change. I'm just going to rotate this, make sure it's even all the way around. We are all the way in. Go ahead and remove the seal driver. We've got the clip. We can just go around the tube, push this end in. We'll press it down and make sure we hear it clip into place. I'm just going to use the driver to do that. There we go. After that, I'm going to press down on the oil seal. A lot of times you can just pop them in, but if not, you can use a dead blow hammer or soft face mallet. All right, now we are ready for some oil. So for anybody that didn't use the special tool to tighten things down, you should have already removed your spacer and washer. At this point, you also need to go ahead and remove your spring. And we're going to dump some oil in the fork. So the spec is 179 cc's, but with that, we're going to take a measurement from the top as well. So we're going 90 millimeters from the top. The manual calls for 92 millimeters from the top. In either case, pour the oil in and then we'll measure it out. And with us just having this measuring cup, it's not the most accurate. So that's another reason we're just sucking any extra oil out from the top. So with this, you want to pump the fork tube up and down. I would do it at least 10 times. That's just going to distribute the oil. We'll let it sit for a few minutes and then we'll take the extra out. All right, I'm just going to set my scale to 90 millimeters and we're going to take the extra oil out. So with that, just took a little extra out. And I do want to mention, the manual is going to tell you 92 millimeters. For one, that's a little hard to measure on that scale. And then two, the little bit of extra oil is going to give you some extra bottoming resistance. So that's why we're going with that spec. Now from here, all we need to do is install the spring for the final time. Again, that's going to be the more narrow end facing down. Then we've got our washer on top of the spring. Got my spacer, and I'm going to lube up the end of this cap, just that O-ring. I'm going to get this clip ready to go. That way I can do this all at once. I'm going to raise this outer tube all the way up. I'll clamp this in my soft jaws. Got the clip right above the cap. Gonna press this down into place. And it might be a good idea to have a friend help you do this. I've got the clip down in there. I'm gonna make sure it's clipped all the way down. Press it down with my pick. And once you have it there, you can release the pressure, make sure it doesn't pop out, and we can set our plastic cap on. And from here, we're ready to move on to the other fork. All right, to put the forks back in, make sure the triple clamps are clean. We'll slide each of them into place, and we're going level with the top of the surface on that upper triple clamp. And we're gonna temporarily tighten the upper and lower bolts. And then with this wheel, we've got our spacer in the right side. You wanna make sure this cable is routed correctly. Then we'll slide the shoes into the drum. And then you're gonna line up the drum with that left fork leg. Slide the axle through, install the washer and nut. And then we can go back through and torque all of the bolts down. So the upper triple clamps are gonna be 18 foot-pounds. The lower triple clamps are gonna be 24 foot-pounds. And then the axle nut is gonna be 25 foot-pounds. And then put the brake cable back into the retainer and tighten up the bolt. So there you have it. That's how you change out the fork seals and get your forks rebuilt on the Yamaha TT-R110s. If you have any questions, leave those down in the comments. If you need any parts for your bike, you can find that stuff on our website. Just click the link in the description below. It's going to take you over to our website. Orders over $75 ship free. And if you want to see more helpful content like this, subscribe to our channel. I'm Charles with Rocky Mountain ATV MC. Thanks for watching.